Commander Rhea Potal stood at the helm of the EDS Artemis, her dark eyes fixed on the holographic display that filled the bridge's main viewport. The massive ships that had just emerged from hyperspace looked like polished obsidian, their surfaces reflecting starlight in geometric patterns that seemed too perfect to be natural. 23 vessels, each identical to the next, arranged in a formation that reminded her of a mathematical equation made physical. "Analysis," she ordered, keeping her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. This was humanity's first contact with an alien civilization, and it was happening on her watch. Lieutenant Marcus Rodriguez's fingers danced across his console. "The vessels appear to be constructed from an unknown crystalline material, Commander. Their energy signatures are unlike anything in our database. They're arranged in what appears to be a perfect Fibonacci spiral." "Of course they are," Rhea muttered. She had studied theoretical xenology at the Academy, but nothing had prepared her for the reality of facing an alien fleet that treated space combat like a geometry problem. The Artemis's AI highlighted a change in the alien formation. Their spiral was expanding, each ship moving in perfect synchronization as they established a loose sphere around Earth's defensive fleet. It was beautiful, precise, and terrifying. "Commander," called out Navigation Officer Yuki Tanaka, "they're broadcasting something. It's pure mathematics. Quantum equations, to be specific." Rhea leaned forward, studying the patterns. After 20 years in Earth's defense force, she had learned to trust her instincts. Something felt off about this encounter. The aliens' approach was too perfect, too calculated. Where was the uncertainty that should come with first contact? "Send them the first contact package," she ordered. "All frequencies, all formats." The package had been prepared years ago by Earth's best linguists and scientists, a carefully crafted message of peace and friendship, using universal constants and mathematical principles to convey humanity's peaceful intentions. The response came almost instantly. The alien ships shifted their formation again, creating new geometric patterns that seemed to pulse with internal light. Lieutenant Rodriguez's console erupted with warnings. "Commander, they're powering up weapons systems. Their formation. It's a textbook orbital siege pattern." Rhea's mind raced. Why would they respond to a peace message with battle formations? Unless, "Show me the exact sequence of our transmission," she demanded. The data scrolled across her screen, and suddenly she understood. The first contact package had been broadcast on multiple frequencies simultaneously, creating a complex pattern of overlapping signals. To a civilization that thought in pure mathematics and perfect patterns, it might have appeared as chaos, or worse, as an attack. "All ships, maintain position," she broadcast to her fleet. "Do not, I repeat, do not enter defensive formations." It was a risk, but her gut told her that mirroring their mathematical precision would only escalate the situation. The alien ships paused, their perfect formation holding steady. Their weapons remained powered but didn't fire. Rhea had bought them some time. But she knew the real challenge was just beginning. "Lieutenant Tanaka, prepare a new message. Single frequency, simple binary sequence. Let's try this again, but this time we'll speak their language. Or at least, we'll try to." As she watched the alien fleet hover in their impossibly precise formation, Rhea couldn't help but smile. These beings, whoever they were, had clearly evolved to see the universe through the lens of pure logic and mathematical perfection. They were about to learn that humans operated quite differently. The next few hours would determine whether humanity's first contact would end in understanding or war. But as Rhea studied the aliens' rigid formations and predictable patterns, she began to suspect that their greatest strength, their devotion to perfect order, might also be their greatest weakness. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, start analyzing their formation changes. Every angle, every position shift. If they think in mathematics, then let's solve their equation." She turned to address her bridge crew. "We're about to teach these beings that not everything in the universe can be reduced to numbers and patterns. Sometimes, the most logical solution is to be illogical. The alien ships continued their synchronized dance in space, unaware that they were about to encounter something their perfect calculations had never accounted for: human unpredictability. Across the bridge, her crew worked with focused intensity, each person bringing their unique perspective to the challenge at hand. This wasn't just about preventing a war anymore. It was about proving that humanity's greatest strength lay not in perfection, but in its beautiful imperfection. As she prepared her next move, Raya felt the weight of history on her shoulders. The next few moments would either mark the beginning of an interstellar war or the start of humanity's greatest adventure among the stars. Either way, she was determined to show these mathematical beings that there was more to intelligence than perfect patterns and flawless logic. The game was about to begin, and humanity was playing for keeps. Lieutenant Kai Nakamura hadn't slept in 36 hours, but his eyes remained fixed on the quantum analysis displays before him. While others on the bridge of the EDS Artemis watched the alien fleet's threatening maneuvers, he studied the underlying patterns in their behavior. Something about their movements nagged at his scientific mind, not as a threat, but as a puzzle waiting to be solved. "Commander Patel," he called out, his voice cutting through the tense atmosphere on the bridge. "I think I found something in their communication patterns." Rhea moved to his station, her uniform creasing slightly as she leaned over his shoulder. The displays showed complex wavelength analyses of the aliens' transmissions, overlaid with their movement patterns. "Look here," Kai pointed to a particular sequence. "Every time they communicate, their ships maintain exact distances from each other, down to the picometer. It's not just formation flying, it's part of their communication system." Rhea's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "They're using quantum entanglement for communication, but in a way we never considered. Their entire fleet acts as one giant quantum array. The geometric patterns aren't just for show, they're literally speaking through mathematics." Across the bridge, Lieutenant Rodriguez interrupted with new urgency in his voice. "Commander, the alien fleet is expanding again. 3 more vessels just dropped out of hyperspace, taking up positions that—" He paused, checking his readings. "That perfect the golden ratio of their formation." Kai's fingers flew across his console, adding the new data to his analysis. "That confirms it," he said, excitement creeping into his voice despite his exhaustion. "They're not just communicating through quantum mechanics, they're thinking through it. Their entire decision-making process is based on mathematical perfection." Rhea straightened, her mind racing with the implications. And what happens to perfect mathematics when you introduce an undefined variable? "Chaos," Kai replied, a slight smile forming on his face. "Pure, unpredictable chaos." The alien fleet now numbered 26 ships, each one identical to the others, each one positioned with mathematical precision. Their weapons remained powered, holding Earth's smaller fleet in their sights, but they hadn't fired. They were waiting, calculating, trying to solve the equation that humanity represented. "Lieutenant Nakamura," Rhea said, her voice taking on a thoughtful tone, "how precise does their positioning need to be for their communication system to function?" Kai ran some quick calculations. Based on the quantum signatures we're detecting, they can't deviate more than a few nanometers without degrading their signal. It's incredibly sophisticated but also incredibly rigid. And if we were to disrupt that precision, their entire command and control structure would begin to break down. "But Commander, their technology is far advanced beyond ours. We couldn't hope to match their precision or power." "Who said anything about matching it?" Rhea's lips curved into a smile. "Sometimes the best way to win isn't to play the game better. It's to change the rules entirely." She turned to address the bridge crew. "These beings, these—" She paused, searching for the right word. "The Symmetrians," Kai suggested, given their obsession with mathematical symmetry. "The Symmetrians," Rhea nodded. "They've built their entire civilization on the principle of perfect order. Their technology, their communications, their tactics, all based on flawless mathematical precision. but they've never encountered a species that embraces chaos as well as order. Lieutenant Rodriguez looked up from his tactical display. "Commander, they're broadcasting again. More quantum equations. I think they're giving us an ultimatum. The patterns suggest a countdown." "Let them count," Rhea replied. "While they're calculating their perfect attack patterns, we're going to show them something they've never seen before." She turned back to Kai. "Lieutenant Nakamura, I want you to work with tactical. Calculate exactly how much positional disruption we need to interfere with their quantum communication array. But more importantly, I want you to make it look random, unpredictable, human." The bridge crew worked with renewed purpose as Kai began his calculations. The Symmetrians continued their synchronized movements, each shift and turn executed with precision that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so threatening. They were preparing for battle the only way they knew how, through perfect, predictable patterns. What they couldn't know was that humanity was about to introduce them to a concept their mathematical minds had never fully grasped: controlled chaos. The kind of chaos that had driven human innovation for millennia, the kind that led to breakthrough discoveries and revolutionary tactics. As Kai worked, he couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Symmetrians had evolved to see the universe through the lens of pure mathematics, seeking perfect order in everything. They were about to learn that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe wasn't order at all. It was humanity's embrace of beautiful, unpredictable chaos. The stage was set for a battle that would be fought not just with weapons, but with two fundamentally different ways of thinking. And humanity was about to show these mathematical beings that not all equations had perfect solutions. Wing Commander Arjun Sharma pulled back on his flight controls, sending his fighter into a seemingly erratic spiral that would have made any flight instructor fail him instantly. Behind him, 4 other pilots from Phoenix Squadron followed suit, each executing their own unique pattern of unpredictable movements. "Phoenix, lead to Artemis," he called over the comm, implementing Operation Butterfly Effect. "It's just as crazy as it looks, Commander." From the bridge of the Artemis, Commander Patel watched the 5 fighters begin their dance. Each ship moved independently, following no discernible pattern, like leaves caught in different winds. It was precisely the opposite of everything space combat doctrine taught. "Keep it random, Phoenix Squadron," she ordered. "But stay within the calculated disruption zone." The Symmetrian fleet's response was immediate and exactly what Lieutenant Nakamura had predicted. Their perfect formation shifted, attempting to compensate for the chaos Phoenix Squadron was introducing into their battle space. But every time they adjusted, the human fighters changed direction again, never establishing a pattern that could be predicted or countered. "Commander," Kai called from his station, excitement evident in his voice. "Their quantum field is destabilizing. The disruption is working." On the main display, the effects were becoming visible. The Symmetrian ship's movements, once perfectly synchronized, began to show tiny discrepancies. Microscopically small at first, but growing larger as their quantum communication network struggled to maintain coherence in the face of human unpredictability. "Phoenix 3, break left," Arjun ordered, watching as one of the crystalline ships attempted to target his wingman. But the Symmetrian vessel's targeting systems, designed to calculate perfect intercept trajectories, couldn't adjust to the fighter's chaotic movements. Lieutenant Rodriguez's tactical display lit up with new data. "Commander, the Symmetrians are trying to re-establish their formation, but they can't compensate fast enough. Their ships are actually moving out of quantum sync with each other." Rhea allowed herself a small smile. "They're trying to solve an equation that keeps changing. Every time they think they've found the pattern in our movements, we show them there isn't one." The space between the two fleets had become a swirling dance of chaos versus order, with Phoenix Squadron's 5 small fighters causing havoc among the massive Symmetrian vessels. The alien ships' attempts to maintain their perfect formations while tracking the unpredictable human fighters were forcing them to break their own carefully maintained quantum links. "Phoenix lead," Arjun called out, his fighter narrowly avoiding an energy beam from one of the Symmetrian ships. They're starting to fire, but their targeting is off. Way off. They can't predict where we'll be. Kai's hands flew across his console, analyzing the data streaming in. Commander, their quantum field cohesion is down to 67% and falling. They're losing their ability to coordinate their actions. Each ship is starting to act independently. The Symmetrian fleet's perfect geometric patterns were beginning to break down. Their attempts to target the human fighters while maintaining their formation were creating contradictory requirements that their rigid, mathematics-based systems couldn't resolve. Now for Phase 2, RIA announced. All ships implement dispersal pattern Delta. Let's show them what organized chaos looks like. The rest of Earth's fleet began to move, each ship following carefully calculated yet seemingly random trajectories. To the Symmetrians' quantum sensors, it must have looked like madness, a complete breakdown of military order and discipline. But there was method in the madness, a human understanding of chaos theory that the mathematical aliens couldn't grasp. Their flagship is broadcasting again, Rodriguez reported. The quantum signatures are erratic. I think they're confused, Commander. Their patterns don't make sense anymore. They're experiencing something their perfect mathematical models never prepared them for, Kai explained, his eyes still fixed on his readings. They're experiencing human unpredictability on a scale that's overwhelming their systems. Arjun's voice crackled over the comm again. Phoenix lead to Artemis. Request permission to push closer to their formation. Their shots aren't even coming close to us now. Rhea studied the tactical display, watching as the once perfect Symmetrian fleet struggled to maintain any semblance of their former precision. Their ships were now moving almost independently, their quantum communication network disrupted by the chaos humans had introduced into their perfectly ordered universe. Permission granted, Phoenix lead, she replied. Show them that chaos isn't just about disorder. It's about adaptation, about finding patterns in randomness that even perfect mathematics can't predict. As Phoenix Squadron pressed their advantage, the Symmetrian fleet's response became increasingly disorganized. Their attempts to counter the human tactics only led to further breakdown of their own formations. They were experiencing, perhaps for the first time in their civilization's history, the fundamental truth that humanity had always known, that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was controlled chaos. The battle was far from over, but the tide had turned. Humanity had found a way to fight in technologically superior force, not by matching their strength, but by introducing something their perfect calculations couldn't handle, the beautiful unpredictability of the human spirit. The bridge of the Symmetrian command ship was a study in crystalline perfection. Until now. High Commander Zix 427 watched in growing distress as the quantum interfaces that usually displayed perfect mathematical harmony descended into chaos. The human vessels moved in ways that defied their most advanced prediction algorithms. Calculation error, the ship's AI announced for the 1007th time. Unable to establish targeting solution. Pattern recognition algorithms failing. On the EDS Artemis, Commander Patel watched as the alien fleet's perfect formation continued to deteriorate. Lieutenant Nakamura, status report. Their quantum field cohesion is down to 31%, Commander. Kai reported, his eyes darting between displays. Their ships are barely able to coordinate with each other now. But, he paused, frowning at a new reading. Something's changing in their energy signatures. Before Raya could ask for clarification, Lieutenant Rodriguez cut in. Commander, the Symmetrian ships, they're powering down their weapons. The massive crystalline vessels had indeed ceased their attempts to target the human ships. Instead, they hung in space, their once perfect formation now a scattered array of confused vessels. New transmission incoming, Rodriguez announced. It's different from their previous patterns. Simpler, almost like they're trying to speak our language. Raya leaned forward. Put it through. The message that came through was a series of basic mathematical equations, but unlike the complex quantum mathematics they'd used before, These were elementary algebra. It was like they were starting over, trying to find a common ground. "They're learning," Kai said softly. "They're adapting." Phoenix lead to Artemis. Arjun's voice cracked over the comm. "The Symmetrian ships are maintaining distance but not retreating." Orders. Raya studied the tactical display thoughtfully. "Maintain your unpredictable patterns, but don't press them. I think we're about to see something interesting." On the Symmetrian command ship, High Commander Zix 427 had made a decision that would change their civilization forever. For the first time in their recorded history, they would abandon perfect mathematical precision in favor of experimentation. New transmission from the Symmetrian flagship, Rodriguez reported. They're attempting to mimic our communications format. The message that came through was crude by Symmetrian standards, but clear in its intent. "We observe. We learn. We wish to understand." Raya smiled. "Send them our original first contact package again, but this time on a single frequency, simplified format." The response was immediate. The Symmetrian ships began to move again, but differently now. Their movements were still precise, but no longer bound by rigid mathematical patterns. They were attempting to mirror the controlled chaos of the human vessels, albeit clumsily. "They're trying to understand how we think," Kai realized aloud. "Their entire civilization is based on mathematical perfection, but we've shown them there's another way to approach the universe." The space between the two fleets had become a strange dance of order and chaos, with the Symmetrian ships awkwardly attempting to incorporate randomness into their movements, while the human vessels maintained their unpredictable patterns. "Commander," Kai called out, excitement in his voice. "Their quantum field, they're deliberately destabilizing parts of it. They're experimenting with imperfection." Rhea nodded slowly. "They're not just learning our tactics, they're trying to understand our perspective." "Lieutenant Rodriguez, prepare a new message. Let's show them that humanity's strength isn't in chaos or order alone, but in knowing when to use each." As the human fleet began its response, the Symmetrians watched and learned. Their perfect mathematical universe had been shaken to its foundations, but from that disruption, something new was emerging. A recognition that perhaps the universe wasn't meant to be reduced to perfect equations after all. The next few hours would be crucial, not just for preventing war, but for establishing a bridge between two radically different ways of thinking. Humanity had shown the Symmetrians that imperfection could be a strength, that chaos could be controlled, and that sometimes the most powerful solutions came from embracing uncertainty. In the crystalline corridors of the Symmetrian flagship, High Commander Zix 427 began composing a report that would revolutionize their society. "Humans have shown us that there are patterns within chaos, and chaos within patterns. We have much to learn." 6 months after the first encounter between humanity and the Symmetrians, the observation deck of the EDS Artemis hosted an unprecedented gathering. Commander Rhea Patel stood beside High Commander Zix 427, watching as human and Symmetrian ships practiced joint maneuvers in the space before them. The crystalline alien vessels no longer moved in perfect geometric patterns. Instead, they had learned to blend mathematical precision with controlled randomness, creating a new form of space combat doctrine that neither civilization could have developed alone. "Your concept of intuition remains fascinating," Zix 427 said, their crystalline form shimming slightly as they spoke through the newly developed translator. To make decisions without complete mathematical certainty, it seemed impossible 6 months ago. Now we begin to understand its value. Rhea watched as Phoenix Squadron, led by Arjun Sharma, demonstrated their chaotic yet controlled flight patterns for a group of Symmetrian pilots. The alien ships followed, their movements becoming progressively less rigid, more fluid. "They're learning quickly," Lieutenant Nakamura observed from his station. "Their quantum field technology has evolved too. Instead of requiring perfect positioning, they can now maintain communication through controlled uncertainty states." The Symmetrians had done more than just adapt their military tactics. Their entire civilization was undergoing a transformation, incorporating human concepts of controlled chaos into their previously rigid mathematical society. They called it the Great Integration. Our scientists still struggle to accept that some problems have multiple valid solutions, Zix 427 continued. But we cannot deny the evidence. Your species' ability to thrive in uncertainty, to find patterns in chaos, and create chaos in patterns. It has opened new avenues of research we never considered possible. On the main display, a Symmetrian vessel executed a perfect corkscrew maneuver before breaking into an unpredictable zigzag pattern. 6 months ago, such a movement would have been considered madness by their standards. Now, it was part of their standard training. Commander Rodriguez called from his station. The Joint Fleet exercises are showing a 300% improvement in combat effectiveness. The blending of our chaos theory with their quantum mathematics is creating entirely new tactical possibilities. Rhea nodded, remembering the tense standoff that had started it all. Sometimes the best way to understand each other is to first misunderstand each other completely. The Symmetrians had their own phrase for it now, the paradox of imperfect perfection. Their mathematicians were developing entirely new branches of quantum theory based on controlled uncertainty principles, inspired by human unpredictability. We have established learning centers on our homeworld, Zix 427 said, their crystalline form pulsing with what Rhea had learned to recognize as excitement. Young Symmetrians now study human history, art, and tactical doctrine alongside traditional mathematical disciplines. Many are eager to understand how your species turns apparent chaos into advantage. Lieutenant Kai approached with a data tablet. The latest results from the Joint Research Project, Commander. The Symmetrians' quantum field technology combined with our chaos theory applications is revolutionizing both our civilization's understanding of space-time itself. The greatest breakthrough had come when the Symmetrians finally grasped that humanity's apparent randomness wasn't truly random at all. It was a complex interplay of instinct, experience, and adaptation that their mathematical models were only now beginning to comprehend. Next month, Rhea said, we'll begin the first officer exchange program. Human crews serving on Symmetrian ships, learning your quantum technology, while your officers experience our more intuitive approach to space operations. A concept that would have been mathematically impossible to consider 6 months ago, Zix 427 agreed. Yet here we are, finding strength in the balance between order and chaos. As they watched the Joint Fleet exercises continue, Rhea reflected on how close they had come to war. Instead, humanity's greatest apparent weakness, its unpredictability, had become the foundation for an alliance that was reshaping both civilizations. The universe, they were learning together, was neither purely mathematical nor purely chaotic. It was both, and neither, and everything in between. The Symmetrians were learning to embrace uncertainty, while humans were gaining a deeper appreciation for the patterns underlying their apparent randomness. Perhaps, Zix 427 observed, watching as another group of ships began their exercises, the true perfection lies not in perfect order or perfect chaos, but in the perfect balance between the two. Rhea smiled. That, High Commander, sounds like a very human conclusion. Indeed, the Symmetrian leader's crystalline form sparkled with what might have been amusement. Perhaps that is precisely why it is correct. The Joint Fleet continued their maneuvers against the backdrop of stars, their movements a beautiful dance of order and chaos, precision and unpredictability. A living symbol of two civilizations, learning that their greatest strengths lay not in their differences, but in their willingness to learn from each other. The universe, as both species were discovering, had room for both mathematical perfection and human chaos. And in that understanding, they had found something greater than either could have achieved alone, the perfect harmony of imperfection.